Welcome back to CIS 101. Last class, we talked a little bit about security issues, what is identity theft, how identity theft is committed, a little bit about some of the different types of hackers and crackers and made a distinction between the two, although we tend to use hacker for everybody now. Some of the tools that hackers use and the types of attacks that they might use, like a denial of service, what a computer virus is, and why they can be a threat to your security, or what malware is, and a little bit about some of the different types of malware, and why you never want to just accept attached files from anybody, or open a file from somebody whom you don't know. And even when you do know them, you want to be a little careful. A little bit about social engineering, how to protect your computer from virus infections, passwords and biometric characteristics, what they are, how they can be used at work and at home, and some of the ways you can search the web anonymously. Today we're going to talk a little bit about security issues and strategies, part 2 I guess you call it, and just a revision from last week. Again, this is something that's well worth finding a little bit more about. The average max salary for network security individuals, not managers, not supervisors, is just short of $100,000 a year for the top 25%, and the average median salary in Chicago is about $76,000 a year. Last year, the last 2 years, network security jobs have had a 0% unemployment rate, which is actually not a good thing, because it means that in some ways, companies are hiring anybody they can get their hands on. They really, and then finding out later if they really can do what they want them to do or not. And bear in mind that companies aren't always real clear about exactly what they want. So there can be a disconnect between what a manager tells HR he wants and what HR goes out and gets. And again, just to revisit, we talked last week about the fact that a lot of us know a lot about security already. We just don't know it. If you want to protect your home, your car, whatever, the most effective thing you can do is to lock your doors and windows, something that we already know. But for some reason, companies are willing to hire people and spend money on outside consultants to come in and say, you really need to lock your doors and windows. You're not doing a good job. Which the companies know that, but they need to be told that by somebody from the outside. And we talked about how, in addition to locking doors and windows, sadly, but the most effective way to protect your digital equipment is to keep teenagers, boys in particular, but girls are not far behind, from, getting on your stuff and just, because they'll click, my kids will click on anything. It took me 2 months to get my daughter reinstated with Apple, because she had a little bit of a problem with her phone, she clicked on anything. And we talked about how the second most effective thing that you can do is to basically install and keep current your antivirus software. And of course, the reasons you want to be concerned about network and internet security is because computer crime is alive and well. And computer crime is anything that involves, in part or in whole, digital technology. It can be a cell phone, can be sending pictures of security cameras when you're casing a joint. There was a problem on the south side in a high school where they were running a problem with somebody was doing not very good copies of fake $1 bills, and they actually got caught because it turned out that a group of kids was meeting in the library and using the color copier in the library to run off copies of $1 bills and run down the lunchroom and paying for them in the crush. And they got caught because one individual was in too much of a hurry and they forgot to copy the back of the $1 bill. And so when he handed it and the back was blank, aha, we gotcha. And then again, on the way down to the principal's office, the person they caught sang like a canary, just gave up everybody. It wasn't my fault, they made me do it, yada this, yada that. And think about it. They were counterfeiting $1 bills. This is a federal crime with 20 years in jail. It's just not worth doing. Other types of computer crime include blocking or allowing, you're running a risk every time you do it, unauthorized access, insiders and outsiders, family members. We like to say that one of the smartest things you can do is if you share a computer, everybody has their own username and password, you make them use it, so then you know who logged on and did it. And you don't share your passwords with people because then they can log on and do things of the best of intentions using your username and password so it looks like you. Okay? Talked a little bit about hacking and how hacking is it used to be just white hat individuals, but increasingly it's been used to cover hacking and cracking. And these are people that break into a computer using some sort of digital device to steal information, sabotage the system, make a point, social hacking we call it, and they want to make a point just for the bragging rights that they did it. Or it might possibly be authorized hacking when they are actually hacking because the company said, look, we want you to test our security. Okay, and Wi-Fi hacking is sadly becoming increasingly prevalent because many Wi-Fi networks, especially the free networks in the fast food places like McDonald's, Burger King, and Panera Bread and stuff, are not really secure. And using them is on you; it's your risk. We also have war driving, if you've ever, especially in the suburbs, but you ever drive around. Most of us don't notice it, but a lot of times on the curbs, you will see chalk marks, and we just mostly don't pay attention to them. But those chalk marks are actually code for war drivers to each other about what networks are available, what the passwords are, how to easily access them, or which ones are really tough, and and welcome to it. Get yourself some bragging rights if you can break in. We use the concept or the topic of the interception of communications to refer to people that use technology to gain access to data stored on a computer or act as a man in the middle. Like somebody goes to a fast food place and they set up their laptop and they look for all the world like there's somebody else hanging out there doing work, but they have a VPN, they have a false access point set up on the computer, and it looks like it belongs there. It's Panera Bread 7 or it's McDonald's 9, and other laptops will automatically log on to it, as we can see in the video last week, and then they just basically monitor all your communications, intercept every username, every password, every keystroke you do, they record. Okay, have it all, and then they take that money and they go to town. They take that information and either use it themselves or they sell it to somebody. We talked a little bit about computer sabotage, the act of malicious destruction of a computer or computer device. Can be very irritating, can be a virus, can be a worm, can be a Trojan horse of some type. You want to be careful of all of them. It's like, sadly, we go downtown, we like to know there are things, you don't just flash your expensive, your $1,000, smartphone where people can grab it. There are some places you don't want to go with $10 and $20 bills hanging out of your pocket. You have to lose a little common sense. Same thing with, behaving on the internet. If you're not careful, you can run into problems. And sometimes people don't realize that sometimes the best thing you can do when you run into a problem is just hit the off switch and cut your connection. Okay? Just give it up and go do something else for a bit and think about what happened. Another type of computer sabotage is known as a denial of service attack, and this is when somebody uses or floods a web server or servers with so much activity that's unable to function. Think about going into a room and everybody is calling a person's name. The person is like, what? One at a time. I can't handle everybody. Okay? And just a quick review on this. The act of breaking into another computer system, if you remember what we just talked about, is called hacking. Okay? A denial of service attack is a form of, is it war driving, computer sabotage, or computer virus? And the answer should be computer sabotage. True or false? Computer viruses can only be spread via the internet, and that would be false. It's, an instinct you might want to say is true, but no, it can be someone inserting a USB drive to show you something. It doesn't have to be across the internet. Okay? And computer sabotage can include things like data or program alteration. You might remember the movie Ferris Bueller's Days Off, when he basically hacks into the school system and he alters the attendance records to show that he actually missed like 2 months of school. He's actually, they say we just have one attendance. Other considerations include protecting against unauthorized access, either at work or at home, unauthorized use, and computer sabotage. And you can't eliminate security risks. Just like, you can't eliminate the risk of somebody breaking into your home. You can reduce it by using some common sense things. At work or at home, you carefully control access to your organization's facilities and you use the appropriate security software and you update it. You can also, probably not at home, but certainly at work, You can have reward programs to help reduce computer crime. Pay people, reward people for providing information, that helps the criminals be arrested. Which gets us into the whole concept of access control systems at work or at home, okay, that are used to control access to facilities, to computer networks, okay, and they can be some sort of an identification system, okay, or they can be some sort of an authentication system. Okay? And they are pretty important in the protecting of the data in the company or the individual's databases. And this is something that's constantly changing. Right now we have the we have the smart chip that more and more credit cards are having these days, and at some point they will be improved because the bad guys are constantly coming up with ways to breach the new security standards, so the good guys have to constantly come up with ways to improve those security standards. Types of access control systems include possessed knowledge access systems, like a password. And I want to emphasize to you, they should be strong passwords. Shouldn't be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shouldn't be 00000. Shouldn't be your street address. It should be something a little smarter than that. A word in a foreign language. When my friend speaks a little bit of French, likes to wear hats, his password is the French word for hat, which is chapeau, and then he tacks his age onto it. So chapeau 59. It's not an English word. It essentially is a nonsense word, and adding the numbers to it makes it just a little harder to use. You don't want, sadly, how to put this. They did a study a while back, and in addition to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and password and 0000, they found that the most common male password, super secure, super secret password in the Chicago area was bear, which is not really a tremendously secret thing. In Washington, D.C., the most popular super secret, no one will ever guess my password was Redskins. And again, if you go on someone's Facebook page and they have tons of Redskins stuff or tons of Bears stuff, it's not a real secret that they're a fan. Usernames. Don't necessarily use a username that's easy for you to remember, but not necessarily something that other people will guess. Okay? Just for example, a username that I like to use a lot is Dobre Dave, because it's Slavic for good day, but it's not something that somebody who doesn't speak Russian would necessarily know, okay, or Ukrainian or any of the other Slavic languages. So it's unusual enough that it's not likely to be guessed, and people can automatically assume that it's me. I mean, anybody can be a Dobre Dave. Pins, don't use the last 4 of your social security number. Don't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Use something that you would guess, but it's a little harder for someone else, like 1 digit off your social security number. If your social security number is 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe have a pin that's 2, 3, 4, 5, or something that's a little bit off. Okay? And bear in mind that you can use these tools in conjunction with each other to make it a little harder for people to hack in. The disadvantage with this, and my son has found this out a couple times, and my daughter, I'm sure too, I just haven't found out about it yet, is that when you share this information with an unauthorized individual, they can then go and use it on their own. And actually, in my son's gaming stuff like Fortnite, a couple times he shared his account information with somebody else for whatever reason, and then found that they went and used his information without his permission. A little bit of an oopsie there. Other types of access control systems include possessed object access systems, like a magnetic card, like an ID card, like our student IDs we have here at Triton College, a smart card, some sort of encoded badge, a USB security token, and those are cool because you have to be present. The person has to be present for them. The problem is that if someone gets that, then they can use it. It can be used by an unauthorized individual, which is not necessarily what you want. There's a classic example of the old movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze from several years ago, well worth watching, where he just temporarily, with a good friend, shares his password, and then, then one goes ahead and changes it, and his friend is a little bit freaked out because it turned out his friend was doing some illegal stuff with it, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is not a cool thing. And he winds up getting killed because his friend was doing things. The person he thought was his friend valued the situation more than he did his friendship. Types of access control systems also can include biometric access systems. We're seeing more and more of those. Use of fingerprints, hand geometry, the face, the iris. And the advantage of these is they can only be used by the authorized individual, and this is nice. Also, there are times when you really want to share it with somebody else. You want them to be able to go and do something on your behalf. And of course, with these, that is pretty much blanked out. Okay, some of the considerations for fingerprint is it's easy to use, it's inexpensive. The readers don't always work the way they should, especially if you just got your hand's not squeaky clean. Your hand, easy to use. Scanners can be a little bit expensive for that. Face, you have to think about things like your lighting, whether how your hair is combed, how you will appear. It can affect the results, and the iris. And again, iris technology is requires no direct contact with the user, easy to use, but the lighting can affect the results, and certainly is not inexpensive. Wireless network access considerations. Generally, and this is something, there's a convenience factor with a wireless, but generally it's less secure than a wired network is going to be. Okay, you need to think about if you're going to do this, or you're working, or you live with somebody who does, that you want to enable the Wi-Fi security procedures. Yes, it's a little more inconvenient for people to have a password to log in, but it's more secure for you. And in fact, one of the things I do here is I have a few extra bucks into an older Wi-Fi router, and when we have company come over, I actually turn it on, and it's open access, so they can just use Wi-Fi. And then when the company leaves, I turn it off, and I and my kids all have not the most secure, but it's about medium secure password protection for our Wi-Fi that is left on a regular basis. And then every now and then, when especially in school nights around 9 o'clock, I'll turn off the wireless router because I want to force my kids to go to bed because I know they have to get up and go to school in the morning, and I don't want them to be staying up all night. Sorry about that. Playing games or texting their friends when I want them to be getting a good night's sleep. Okay, sorry about that. Firewalls, and these are distinct from, and I want to make this real clear that firewalls, which can be hardware or software, are distinct and not the same, although they complement antivirus software. They are security systems, hardware or software, that provide a protective boundary between the computer or the network and the outside world, like the concierge at a building. They look at it and they decide who can be allowed into the building and who should not be allowed in the building. And they generally work by closing down all the external communications ports and addresses. Excuse me. They block access to the PC from outside hackers. They block access to the internet from programs on the user's PC unless it's been authorized by the user, because it's very easy to download malware. It's bundled with some program that you want to use. You don't necessarily know it's there, and you want to block, this indiscriminate, communication internet that you're not aware of. And bear in mind, it's important for home PCs that have a direct internet connection, as well as businesses, to have some sort of a firewall. Okay? Now, this is distinct from antivirus software, which is used to detect and eliminate computer viruses and other types of malware that actually get into your system. They should be set up to run continuously. They should be updated on a regular basis. On a regular basis, you should, just like you want to clean your room, clean your place you stay in, you clean your car on a regular basis. You want to set them up to scan your computer or your network on a regular basis. You want to update them on a regular basis. The estimate is that 21 new internet viruses hit the internet streets every day. Okay, they're usually just a modification of the existing one, but the fact of modification means that whatever signature you had before no longer is going to be automatically accurate, so you need to download the updated virus list. Okay, it's best to have programs that automatically download the new virus definitions on a regular basis, and which means the company has to have a commitment to regularly update the new virus definitions for their program. And some of these programs also scan for other threats such as spyware. Not necessarily a bad thing if you can have it. Some virus prevention strategies include using antivirus software to check incoming email messages. And again, the more things you have to do, the slower your system will work. But really, we're talking in terms of human terms, this is really not a whole lot slower, if it's even noticeable at all. Nothing that you can't just have another cup of coffee, another drink, and be a little more patient. This stuff will happen. Certainly beats having all your stuff wiped out. You want to limit the sharing of media between you and your friends and neighbors and certain other people at work. You only want to download files from reputable sites, and even then you want to be a little bit careful. You only want to open email attachments from people that you know, okay, and you're kind of expecting. If every now and then I get an email from somebody I don't know, I'll check the email, make sure it is correct. And I might even call them up and say, did you just send me an email? Because people have been known to spoof email addresses. You've got to be a little careful about this stuff. There's a preview window in many email programs that you may want to keep closed, okay, because basically the preview allows you, semi-opens the program, and if it's a virus, you don't want that. And again, you want to regularly download and install the latest security patches, and kind of be aware of what security issues that there are, and avoid downloading files from P2P sites, okay? If it's free, if it's good, be a little careful about it. Which gets us into communication and the idea of encryption. Encryption has been around as long as, really, before the U.S. The founding fathers used to routinely use encryption as it was effective at their level for their communications, because their privacy was their privacy and there's nobody else's business. And it goes back even further than that. We have records back in the Middle East where when Persia was an empire and fighting the Greeks, that there are records of people tattooing a message to their kinfolk in Turkey, on the head of a servant. The servant would let their hair grow back. The servant would then undertake a travel with some very innocuous messages by to sell that to their relative, and then when they got there, the head would be shaved, and that their kinfolk could read the message. So bear in mind, the servant probably couldn't read, and the message was, basically, this is a good time to actually revolt against the Persian Empire, and because their long-term plans for us are not good for us. You want to make sure you have secure web servers. The most common type of security is use SSL. If you think about it, if you've ever bought anything on the internet, the HTTP in the web browser should have shifted to HTTPS, which stands for Secure Sockets Layer, when you actually came to the time to buy and sell the financial data. Okay. Which gets us into email. More and more, email is the #1 business communication application in the world today. People, not just for social use, people use emails for businesses. Every job I've had in the last 20 years has begun and ended with email communications and various attachments and directions and things like that. You have every right to make your documents unreadable, okay, until they're decrypted. That's what encryption can allow you to do. There are some very good programs out there. Some of them are free, such as Pretty Good Privacy, because again, it is your privacy that you have a right to protect in this country and our culture. And nobody has the right to read your communications to anybody else. It doesn't mean that they're bad. You have a right to expect privacy, and the way that, unfortunately, kind of insist on that is to use encryption sometimes. Encryption programs usually use keys, which are essentially little passwords that are built into the program, and there are various strengths available. Okay, basically anything can be cracked. It really comes down to how much effort they want to put into it. The two most common types of encryption are public key encryption and private key encryption. Okay, we learn more about that in our security class. And you can also use other tools, not encryption, but related to encryption, like a VPN, which is becoming increasingly popular. And that's like basically, if you wear an overcoat over your clothes, nobody knows what you're wearing. A VPN is like that. It's an additional, it's a tunnel. It's a virtual tunnel that your communications go through. And it's like putting a coat on over everything else you have so nobody knows what's on there, or putting a cover over your car. Or cover over something you want to keep, concealed until you want to reveal it. Okay, and they're becoming more and more popular. Bear in mind that a free VPN is not usually. I mean, they're free for a reason. They're doing something with your information. Their business model at some point is going to include selling that information. So what you really want to do, I hate to say it, is generally a 4-pay VPN, a very reasonable one, is probably the way you want to go on this. If you really want effective VPN. And we're finding some browsers like the browser, like the Brave browser, are increasingly having the VPN technology built right into it to make your communications more private. You want to be a little careful with your friends and neighbors and your employees. Most security breaches, 90% plus, are committed by insiders. And in fact, in any organization, the single most effective, sad to say, day for security problems is to bring your child to work day. Because kids, with the best, they don't really mean any harm, but they're bumping against things. They're accidentally nudging cables, maybe pulling something out of the wall by mistake, or they're going on their board and they're going on their parents' keyboard to find a game or something, or they have a USB and they plug it in to show mommy or daddy the greatest game that they just found for free. They don't mean to cause problems, but they do cause problems. Plus, you need to screen your potential new hires carefully. You want to watch for disgruntled employees and ex-employees. You want to develop and enforce policies and controls. It doesn't do any good to have a policy if nobody's paying attention to it. And you want to ask your partners, your business partners, to review their security to avoid attacks coming from someone located at an organization. When I worked at Raytheon, we actually had a problem with our defense. We were working with some defense systems, like say the Air Force, we had some programs that tracked, with databases tracking their aircraft parts list. And we found that we were a little surprised that they were sharing our username and password with some of their independent contractors or security contractors that were on site and were actually taking information and going home and using it within their organization. It's like, no. If you're going to use this information, if you're going to access this system, you have to pay for a license. If we want you to even have one, we can't just automatically assume that you're going to do what we want you to do. Okay? You want to quit trying to always get the best of the situation. There's a huge amount of what we call online theft, fraud, and other .coms going on out there. And basically, it comes down to people trying to take advantage of the situation. A couple of years ago, I bought a computer on eBay, and it was a really nice system, but I was also trying to help the person get up and get going, and get his reputation rank over 100. I was trying to do a good deed, because you want to help somebody build up their business. And it turned out that the person had never sent and had no intention of ever sending the computer to me, and I was fortunate in that I was watching what was going on. The tracking number that they provided actually didn't track to anything. It was just a made-up tracking number. And I was basically able to establish that, okay, there never really was an item to be sold. You were just, it was very much a too good to be true situation. And I was able to get my money back. But there are people that sell things on eBay, and they never plan to actually send anything, or they open up the account, they sell the thing, then they close the account, and they try to take the money and run. And unfortunately, eBay has programs for that. And then, you just have to be careful. And it gets us into the whole concept of identity theft, using someone's identity to purchase goods or services. Sadly, it's alive and well. I still remember a couple of years ago, I was going through my credit card stuff, which I used to do like once a month. Now I do it like every weekend. And I found that I had 7 $100 withdrawals from Lansing, Michigan, from an ATM. Somebody, and then the credit card said, no, this is a little bit weird. You can't keep doing this. And it happened just a day or two ago, and I was able to call them and say, hey, I've never even been in my life to Lansing, Michigan. Don't know how my credit card information got there. I was still looking at the credit card. I really don't know how they got it. But I was able to report it, get reimbursed, and I've been a lot more careful now with my credit cards, and I monitor it every weekend. I try to blow into my credit card and see where the money is going, because I'm much more sensitive to people ripping me off than I used to be. Okay? There are a lot of different ways an identity thief can obtain personal credit card information from the stores. In fact, some of the credit cards I use for routinely buying groceries and stuff at low-end stores are credit cards that deliberately have a very, very low limit, just a few $1,000. I have credit cards that have a $30,000 limit. Okay? I have credit cards that have a $2,000 limit. For a lot of the shopping, for gas and for stores around, or for my car, I use a credit card with just a $2,000 limit because I'm very sensitive. If the information gets compromised, I won't be out too much money, and it's much easier to constantly track those and see, is there anything going on that I don't want to go on? Okay. Ways that identity theft can occur is the thief can attain information about an individual, okay, or they use that information to make online purchases, open new credit cards, and they've actually had a problem with this happening here in the Chicago area, more than once in Chicago area. It happens in all major urban areas, but this particular ring was basically using credit cards people were using for checking into a particular hotel chain. And then what helped seal the deal and get them caught was when they were having all the stuff delivered to their house, and then they were taking pictures with their neat new TVs and neat new computers and neat new stuff, and they were uploading it to Facebook. So it was like they were like providing the visual evidence of the crime they committed. Okay, the victims will eventually be found out. And sad to say, a little bit of trivia information here: the most valuable Social Security numbers in the U.S. are not the Social Security numbers of young kids, not the Social Security numbers, although they are valuable, of old folks, okay? They are the Social Security number of people who are guests of the federal or state prison system, because they, from a credit history standpoint, they're old enough to have a good job. You can make up all sorts of stuff about them. And if they're in jail, they're not really in a position to do anything about, any identity theft. Plus, when they get out, they're concerned if you're in jail is, staying safe and, and getting out, hopefully as quickly as you can. And what people want to do when that happens is they'll not worry about identity theft until they're out. And at which point they have like a plethora of paper trails establishing that they were in jail at the time these crimes were committed, and it's fairly easy for them to then take steps to say, hey, this was never me, this is identity theft. And, it takes some time, but they get it off their system, okay? Which, doesn't help the company, doesn't help you. Okay, also want to think about things like online auction fraud. That's happened to me. I tend to be a little bit careful of it. A friend of mine bought a car on eBay, and I bought cars on eBay. I always buy cars from people with a serious reputation. This friend of mine bought a car on eBay, and he bought it from an individual with not a very, who'd never really sold a lot of things on eBay. No crime in that. But when he bought the car, he found out that it really wasn't what was represented. The guy was just selling it and moving to Florida. He didn't really care. He got scammed a little bit. He didn't get what he paid for. It happens. People spoof. People fake things. Every now and then I'll get an email from myself, and it's like, I didn't send this. This wasn't me. And every now and then on Facebook, I'll see people say, hey, ignore any emails you may have gotten me about this. That wasn't me. My account's been hacked. I've had to take steps to get it fixed. And phishing, which is the use of the technical term for the use of spoofed email messages to gain credit card information. First thing I do every morning is go through and delete email I don't want. And also, I try to identify the email from the notifications from eBay, from my bank saying, hey, you got a problem, or from Nelnet, or Hulu and Netflix about, hey, here's a problem with your account. Click on this link and enter your information. We'll get it straight. And really, as near as I can tell, they're just phishing attacks trying to get me information so that they can rip me off. And they don't know me from Adam. They're trying to rip everybody off. That's what they do. Okay? Privacy. Okay? And privacy is distinct in each country and in each culture. It's not a universal thing that everybody agrees on. Okay? In this country, it refers to the individual's ability to restrict the collection, use, and sale of confidential personal information. The internet is certainly convenient, but it is also, at the same time, it is eroding privacy by the selling of information. Google does a lot of neat free things for us because it uses the information it collects from those free things, like email, like file storage, like where we go and the places we look up and stuff like that. It turns around and sells that information as a group that companies are willing to pay them for it. And it's really, Google is one of the Fortune 100 companies here in the U.S. It's making a lot of money selling to marketers our personal information. Facebook, the same thing. There are not nearly enough laws that regulate the selling of personal information. And bear in mind that even if you have a contract with a company for a service and the contract specifies they will never, ever, ever sell your personal information. If they are ever, a company is ever sold to another company, any prior agreement you had with them is gone. And whatever the new company, the new owning company wants to do with your personal information, they can do. So it doesn't hurt to be a little bit careful. Okay? Anonymity is what we use, the term we use for the ability to convey a message without disclosing one's ability. Using usernames that are not obviously yours. My Facebook username is not obviously me. My names on various things are not obviously me. It makes it a little bit harder to find out who I am. You know, having a name like Anderson is kind of helpful because Anderson, you open up the Chicago phone book and there are pages and pages and pages and pages. Good luck with that. It's like being Smith. Okay? Which gets us into the way that information, it can be, not is, will be, but can be tracked on the internet, the use of cookies and globally unique identifiers. Cookies are small text files, okay, they're in each of your systems. There's usually folders with cookies, and they include recording information for future use, and they're just a convenience thing. It allows stores to remember your username and password. It allows them to remember where you've been and what you've looked at, like when you go to Google or Amazon. Say based on what you've done, this much stuff might be of interest to you. It's just supposed to be helpful. Problem is, it can also be used for information collection. You got to be a little careful about that. And then cookies may look like this in a Windows file. Okay, every operating system has a file folder that hopefully says cookies because they're being honest and upfront with you, but it may be labeled something else. Now, the globally unique identifier is the unique identification number generated by hardware or program when you surf the internet. This is how the internet can track everywhere you've gone and everything you've done. And it's not you, it's your computer. Okay, and there are people, there's a case of a couple years ago where a police officer on the south side was actually investigated and arrested for committing some murders. And he was able to show that his global unique identifiers that the time the murder had occurred, he was online on Amazon doing some stuff because there was a date timestamp. So it could not have been him. And they let him go and they went off and they found whoever it was. He was really kind of upset. And thank goodness, he knew about global unique identifiers because it allowed him to establish that, yes, I know you're looking for somebody. It could not have been me. Now, notice that Intel Corporation, really all chip corporations, have GUIDs in their chips. Okay, and Microsoft has GUIDs in every document. So you can, if you put the time and trouble into it, you can tell where that document is gone. Okay, in terms of protecting your privacy online, you want to think about browsing the internet anonymously. Okay, disabling cookies on your web browser. It makes life a little less convenient. On all my financial websites, I don't allow cookies, and they certainly don't keep my username and password. I take the extra trouble to log into that stuff fresh every time. On my non-financially important websites, I'm a little more casual about it. My social, if I'm just sending emails back and forth about barbecues and getting the kids together, I'm not too worried about that information being misused. But if there's anything to do with money connected to it, or buying and selling of stuff, my browser, my computer, they're not allowed to retain that information. I don't let them. And you want to tell your children not to divulge personal information to strangers or even to their friends. In Chicago, in every major area, okay, there are people who use programs that basically scavenge the internet, browse the internet, collecting information on Facebook or the other social media sites for when people send out posts to their friends. Hey, we're going to be away. We're going to Branson, Missouri for the week or the weekend. We're going up to Wisconsin Dells for the week or the weekend. We're going to Florida or wherever we're going for the week or the weekend. We're not going to be home. Don't come by. And they grab this information and they'll drive up in their panel truck with no windows, says Acme Services, and they get out of the van and they'll have their hat and their uniform shirt with Bob written on it, and they'll have a tablet or a clipboard of some kind. And basically, they knock on the door, and of course, they know that everybody's gone, but they'll knock just to be safe, establish nobody's there, and nobody's going to be there for several days. They have several days to just, back the car in the garage or whatever, and just empty the house of everything valuable. And the neighbors see this, and it's like, well, okay, actually, they look like they know what they're doing. They look like they belong there. We want to respect our neighbor's privacy, and actually, while you're gone, that's a really good time to get the furnace tuned up, to get the carpets cleaned, or whatever they think, they're having done. You get it done while you're gone. Makes perfect sense. And then the family comes back and they've been ripped off, and they say, well, we thought you allowed it. You didn't say to us that you hadn't allowed it. And yes, everybody knew you were leaving because your kids told everybody, told all their friends. Cell phones, okay, your cell phones, it's a convenience feature, but also they're tracking everywhere you go. Okay, just be aware of that. Turning off your cell phone doesn't stop the tracking. Removing the battery does, but then you can't use your cell phone. Protecting your privacy at work. Many, many people are not aware that most of the laws in the U.S., and this is true for just about every country, when you're being paid by somebody to do work there, you're expected to do that work, except for like in the restroom. Everywhere you go and what you do, your company has a right to know about. Your phones are monitored. Your email is monitored. People get fired every week of every year in the U.S. and around the world because they're doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing. And they're like surprised to find out that their email, that their phones are all being monitored. Common sense rules to use at work. Don't use your employer's phone for personal calls. I hate going to Shoe Carnival myself because a couple of times I've been there and, we're trying to actually buy my daughter some, winter shoes, buy my son some winter shoes. And there were two people there clearly working there, and they were discussing, it was like on a Monday or Tuesday, they were discussing their weekend's events with their friends and, whatever. And they were there to help us, and they wanted to finish up the conversation. I'm like, I didn't come here to watch you two get paid by your company to basically discuss your social life. You're here to help us. You can't do that. We're going someplace else. Okay? Use the grandma rule. Assume that everything you're doing at work is being monitored. Okay? That's just a safe rule. You like the money, assume that everything you do is being watched. Just a safe way to go. There are organizations that are trying to track computer crimes, okay, because they're happening all the time, both inadvertent and advertent, okay, which gets us into things you want to think about. We talked a little bit about why to be concerned about network and internet security, to include your phone use. We've talked a little bit about unauthorized access, unauthorized use, computer sabotage, how to protect against unauthorized access, lock those doors, unauthorized use those passwords, computer sabotage, don't lend your stuff to other people. The existence, unfortunately, of online theft, fraud, and other .cons, and how you can protect yourself against online theft, fraud, and other .cons, and personal safety issues. Your neighbors don't have to know everything you're doing. Talk to your family members about just telling all their friends about everything they're up to, like kids are bad about it. In fact, the person, when we go any place, and every now and then I have to burn up my credit card points on a hotel, and we'll go someplace and just stay at the hotel and see friends. I have a friend who is not one of my neighbors come by and, basically make sure the mail's not there and feed the dogs and stuff like that, because I don't want it to be really obvious to my neighbors that I'm not there. Okay? Protecting against cyber stalking and other personal safety concerns, and the fact that network and internet security legislation is not perfect, but it is actually not bad, okay, if you know what you're doing. I've actually used the laws about cyber stalking to get some people off my back who just would not, they needed to get a life, wouldn't leave me alone. Filed a report, in accordance with the steps. Police department wasn't happy about it, but they had to take it. And those people just within a week's time quit bothering me, which is all I really wanted. Didn't know what was going on with that. Okay, extra credit. Choose one of the two. Discuss unauthorized access, unauthorized use, and computer sabotage, or talk a little bit about network and security internet legislation, where it is. Either one of these topics, 100 words, submit them in assignment 14 for extra credit. Okay, which gets us to, again, read chapter 9. We're jumping into PowerPoint Labs 1 and 2. You want to get your Excel quiz in if you haven't got it in already. Every semester, there are people that try to use Thanksgiving, okay, which is just before the final exam, to try to get caught up on everything. And oh, I'll get it done then. I'll get it done then. I'll get it done then. In 20 years, I've never seen anybody actually plan to use Thanksgiving and get caught. Well, maybe once. Okay. One time in 20 years, someone actually managed to do that. And every other person that was planning to make everything up over Thanksgiving, it just doesn't happen. You have all sorts of other obligations going on then. So just don't try to stall until Thanksgiving then with the assumption you'll get it done in Thanksgiving. It just never seems to happen. And when we get back from Thanksgiving, very quickly, okay, we're going to be wrapping up the semester and we're going to be into the final exam, okay, which is in 6 weeks' time. It's going to be the week of December 14th, okay? So you want to pay attention to those chapter review questions. All right, subject to your questions, I'll be around to answer them, or I'll be online throughout the week to answer them. And this is a neat chapter. This is a neat topic. Again, the pay is really good. The job demand is really good. I really, really urge that you look into this.